Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast, and Merry Christmas.
Today we're looking at Nike.
As usual, before we start, subscribe, like, and comment to this video to support the show. And if there's a specific company you want us to look into, leave it in the comments below.
So let's get into the analysis.
Yeah, let's do it. Nike has been one of the most talked about stocks this last year. A lot of pressure, a lot of headlines.
And a lot of negative numbers. The main question we have to tackle is whether all that pain we saw was, a sign of long-term rot, or if it was actually calculated.
A strategic move.
Exactly. Was this an intentional purge by management, or did they really lose their momentum to some of these newer rivals?
So the core idea here is that the financial downturn, everything we saw in 2025, wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate reset.
That's the thesis. And it's a big pill to swallow when you first see the numbers. I mean, fiscal year 2025 revenue is down 10%.
Just bad enough?
Right. But net income fell 44%. I mean, a truly staggering drop.
Okay, hold on. A 44% drop in net income. Calling that a strategic reset. I mean, that sounds a little like management spin, doesn't it? What exactly did they do to cause numbers that bad?
Well, the key word here is inventory. They made a very deliberate choice to sacrifice their short-term profits.
Oh.
By aggressively, and I mean aggressively, clearing out old excess stock, they were focused on purging aging lifestyle products.
Stuff that had just been sitting on shelves for too long.
Exactly. Think about some of the, the long-time staples like certain Air Force One lines that had just saturated the market. They basically treated that inventory like it was toxic.
So they're paying a temporary tax on their earnings to clean house.
That's a perfect way to put it. A short-term margin hit to reset the shelf space, reset the brand narrative for the long haul.
And they did this by selling it off cheap.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Selling through clearance channels, off-price partners, all at these significantly reduced margins. It absolutely crushed their earnings in 2025. But, it was a necessary evil to clean the slate.
Okay, so if that's the story, the market needs to see proof that the bleeding has stopped. What's the signal that they're past the worst of this inventory purge?
The signal, I think, it came pretty clearly in the fourth quarter of fiscal 25. The full year looked awful, we know that. But Q4 revenue came in at $12.43 billion.
How did that compare?
Critically, it actually beat Wall Street estimates by 1.7%. Now, that might not sound like much.
Right.
But it suggests the heavy lifting of that inventory correction, the purge, is probably behind them. They're focused on growing again, not just cleaning up a mess.
Let me push back on that a bit. A 1.7% beat after those massive drops. Couldn't that just be a result of the fire sale? They marked everything down so much that they finally moved some product?
That's a fair question, but I think the real hint of a turnaround comes when you look at the very start of the new fiscal year.
So Q1 of 26.
Right, which ended in August of 2025. In that quarter, revenue rose 1%.
1%, that sounds tight.
It is tiny, but you have to think about the context. Analysts were braced for more double-digit declines. They thought the slide would continue.
So stopping the fall was the win.
Exactly. That 1% rise signaled an immediate halt to the downward spiral. And in that context, it was actually a massive positive surprise. It changed the whole narrative.
From structural decline to, okay, maybe this pivot is actually working. So what are analysts thinking now, looking forward?
They're becoming much more constructive. The general outlook is for around 3.3% revenue growth over the next 12 months.
Which signals confidence that the worst is over.
It signals that the market believes management. They believe the company has successfully pivoted and is moving past that deliberate contraction phase.
And crucially, they could afford to do this. They had the financial strength to take this kind of hit without, sinking the entire ship.
That is the bedrock of this whole thesis. They have what analysts always call a fortress balance sheet. That plus incredibly strong free cash flow generation.
We're talking billions.
Billions. And that allows them to fund these huge multi-billion-dollar cost-cutting programs and strategic shifts without ever worrying about basic financial distress. They're investing in a transition, not just fighting for survival.
Using that financial firepower to double down on their core advantages, their moat.
Right, and it's really three interlocking advantages that are just so hard for rivals to break through, even the fast-growing ones.
The first is the most obvious one, the brand itself. Brand dominance.
It's unmatched. The global recognition, the emotional connection with athletes, it's just on another level. And you have to specifically mention the Jordan brand.
The crown jewel.
It's consistently called the crown jewel of the portfolio for a reason. It's almost like its own separate high-margin revenue machine.
And none of the new competitors can replicate that, no matter how fast they grow. It's pure structural leverage.
Precisely. Then the second piece of that moat is scale and distribution. Their geographic footprint is massive. But the really key strategic move here was restoring their omni-channel strategy.
They pulled back from that direct-to-consumer only push.
They did. They realized that strategy was limiting their reach, especially for mass market products. Which brings us to the third point, the competitive landscape, and maybe most importantly, innovation.
Because rivals like On Holding and Hoka were definitely taking market share for a while there.
They were, but the research suggests Nike timed this pivot perfectly. Just as they were getting their act together, Hoka's incredible hyper-growth started to falter.
How much?
Hoka's growth was running at, what, 25%? It decelerated significantly down into the low teens by late 2025.
Creating a perfect opening for Nike's counteroffensive.
An immediate and necessary opening. They're hitting the market with new stuff, just as their main challenger is losing some steam.
And that counteroffensive is being driven by this huge shift in their tech, right?
Yes.
Moving beyond the old Air concept.
Yeah, a generational shift. They're moving toward these proprietary cushioning technologies they call athlete-first engineering, or AFE.
Is that just marketing jargon, or is there something real there?
No, it's a real technical shift. It's not like their competitors who built brands on, those huge, soft, maximalist soles. Nike is leveraging proprietary materials like their Zoom X foam and focusing on shoe geometry, carbon plates. It's a real R&D advantage.
So if you're a consumer, where do you see this new tech showing up?
You're seeing it in the new elite racing products, things like the Vomero 18, the Alphafly 4. The strategy is to win over the elite running crowd first.
And let that credibility trickle down to the mass market.
Exactly. It reinforces the performance credibility that had been chipped away by those newer rivals. It's a direct shot at On and Hoka in the high-performance arena.
Okay, so the foundation is solid, the moat is secure, innovation is back on track. Let's talk about execution, this win-now strategy.
Right, led by the CEO, Elliott Hill. And the plan is crystal clear. Prioritize restoring the brand and taking back market share, even if it hurts margins in the near term.
And the most immediate part of that is going back to wholesale partners.
That's the biggest near-term revenue catalyst.
Right.
They realized direct-to-consumer is profitable, but it just doesn't have the scale.
So returning to Amazon, expanding the partnership with Foot Locker.
It immediately puts those new innovative AFE products in front of way more people. It sounds basic, but it's critical.
Well, yeah, the new shoes have to actually sell. If those Vomeros are just sitting in a Nike warehouse, the whole innovation story falls apart.
You got it. It's about volume and access. And while you hear a lot of noise about global weakness, especially in Asia, North America has been a rock.
How so?
North America revenue rose a really strong 9% year over year in that last quarter of fiscal 25. That domestic strength is acting as a foundation, sort of cushioning the dips elsewhere while they execute this turnaround.
What's really interesting is the market sentiment around all this. I mean, the stock was identified as a top 10 large cap loser in mid-December 2025. That sounds awful.
It does, but a lot of analysts are interpreting that massive stock pressure as what they call a capitulation event.
Meaning everyone who was going to panic and sell already has.
That's the idea. The mass selling driven by the bad numbers and the absolute worst-case fears about the company's future has already happened. The weak hands have folded.
So the stock has, in theory, already priced in that 44% net income drop and the weakness in China. It's found a floor.
And any subsequent good news or even just stabilization like that 1% growth acts like a spring, pushing it back up. The stock has discounted the worst-case scenario, but we have to be diligent here. We have to talk about the real risks.
Right. There are still major headwinds.
Two primary macro risks. First, as we mentioned, the slowdown in Greater China. It's not a new problem, but it's a persistent one. It's a huge headwind.
The numbers there are still pretty bad.
They are. Revenue dropped 17% in Q4 of 25 and was still down 9% later in the year. That market used to be a massive engine for growth.
And the second big risk.
Tariffs. This is a pure cost problem, but it's a huge one. The estimates were that tariffs on footwear from Vietnam and China could add up to a staggering $1.5 billion in annual costs.
Wow. $1.5 billion. That could wipe out a huge chunk of their cost savings plan if it fully materialized. Are their mitigation strategies working fast enough?
Well, they're actively fighting on both fronts. On the supply chain side, they have this China exit strategy.
Moving production.
Right. The goal is to get the percentage of U.S.-bound footwear made in China down into the high single digits by 2026. This isn't just talk. They are moving capacity right now.
And what about the tariffs?
They got a huge win there. The Vietnam trade deal that happened mid-2025 was a game changer. It took the proposed 46% tariffs way down to 20%.
So that provided immediate material relief against that $1.5 billion number.
It did. It doesn't eliminate the costs, but it makes it manageable. And long-term, they're still pushing for supply chain regionalization, making things closer to where they sell them to reduce that future risk.
So for anyone watching this story, it feels like timing is everything. This is being framed as a multi-year recovery, but it sounds like there's a key short-term event coming up.
There is. The critical, tangible, near-term catalyst is the Q3 fiscal year 2026 earnings report. That's expected in March 2026.
And why is that specific report the moment of truth?
Because that's the one that will confirm two things. First, is the wholesale growth sustained? Are those new partnerships really moving product? And second, are the new running shoes, the AFE lines, actually gaining traction with consumers?
If both of those are positive, the turnaround is real.
It's confirmed. Because it proves they're capitalizing on this whole sport core trend.
Yeah.
You know, that massive global demand for functional, high-performance gear.
And there's another catalyst on the horizon a bit further out.
A big speculative one. The 2026 World Cup sponsorship activation, it's in North America, which is a huge deal for them. They're going to launch a massive marketing blitz in mid-2026.
And historically, those big global sporting events drive major sales spikes.
Huge spikes, and a ton of brand heat that can last for several quarters.
Okay, so let's step back and summarize this for everyone listening. The core thesis is that management is taking its medicine now. They're absorbing temporary costs.
The lower margins, the inventory clear out.
To restore that brand heat and take back market share. And this whole painful process is supported by that fortress balance sheet and the early signs of stabilization we're seeing.
So ultimately, the core question for you, whether you own the stock or are just watching the space, is this. Will management's commitment to athlete-first innovation and their new wholesale strategy be enough to overcome the macro uncertainty in China and those lingering tariff effects?
It's a classic turnaround story.
It is.
Yeah.
And right now, execution is absolutely everything.
That March 2026 earnings report really feels like the date to circle on the calendar. We'll definitely be watching it closely. Make sure you subscribe to catch our follow-up as that pivotal report gets closer.